Well, welcome to the show. If you are hearing this message, it is because I am ready to announce my retirement from making babies. Let me explain. If you're hearing this message, everybody relax. If you're hearing this message, it is because we have welcomed my second, and as far as I'm concerned, final baby, and I will be retiring from baby making. So I will be in and out over the next period of time, but I'm here today and we have really important stuff to talk about. And by the way, if you have children or were once a child or might one day have children, there is really important, significant, momentous stuff going on. And we have to start sort of with like the top of the pyramid, which is, can we count on the will of the people being represented in who ultimately gets into office? And I hate to start on such a negative note on such a special day, but they, meaning MAGA, is going to try to steal the next election too. It's not even hyperbolic speculation. They've tried to do it. They don't want you to vote. That's not new. But what Donald Trump is doing as we look into 2026 is take the old playbook of voter suppression and crank it up to an 11. He didn't just try to win the game. He tried to rewrite the rules when he lost the game in 2020. And it's important when we talk about things like this to acknowledge American elections have never been perfect, right? I mean, for decades, politicians have used a number of tools to tilt the playing field. Gerrymandering is one that we've talked about extensively. Voter ID laws, disinformation. It's all sort of been done before. But what Trump did from 2020 on, and remember, he still hasn't even acknowledged he lost the popular vote to Hillary in 2016, an election that made him president. But certainly from 2020 on, Trump has turned it into something far more dangerous. Before Trump came along, Republicans were trying to figure out, how can we win elections by shrinking the electorate? After the civil rights movement won very important victories for Black voters, especially in the South, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed, and the point was, let's stop racist tactics like poll taxes, literacy tests, intimidation. And one of the most important tools of the 65 Voting Rights Act was preclarance. What preclarance means is that states have to get clearance to change election laws if they are on a list of states that had a history of suppressing the vote. And it actually worked pretty damn well for a while. But the moment that parts of the Voting Rights Act were gutted by the Supreme Court in 2013, you saw Republicans in Texas, North Carolina, Georgia move almost immediately to reduce the number of polling places, cut early voting, purge voter rolls, introduce voter ID, all targeted. They said, oh, it's election integrity, they would say. But it was all targeted to make it more likely that they were making it more difficult for people likely to vote for Democrats to vote. That's who they were trying to make it more difficult to actually go and vote. Latino voters, Black voters, students, the poor, people who leaned towards the Democratic Party. In 2012, Mitt Romney's campaign strategists believed that strict voter ID laws could help them win Pennsylvania, not because of fraud, but because making it harder to vote could swing the outcome. They didn't need to cheat per se, although you could argue it's cheating because you're dissuading the will of the voter to come to the top of the sort of surface as the victor. They just needed fewer of you to show up. Then came Trump. Trump didn't invent these tactics, but he made them the center of Republican politics, and he added something new, which is contempt for democracy itself. Do we really even think that giving people the full, unfettered, unrestricted right to vote is good for the country? You start with 2016, Trump lost the popular vote, still hasn't acknowledged it, didn't accept it. He said, I know I won the Electoral College, but I believe millions of people voted illegally. There were buses going from, what was it, Massachusetts to New Hampshire. And he said it to delegitimize any outcome where he doesn't win. He even launched that voter fraud commission. It's sort of like, this is ancient history in a sense. And it quietly shut down after it found nothing. That was the warm up. We then get to 2020. Trump loses again. This time he loses popular vote by over 7 million. And he also lost the Electoral College. Joe Biden became president, kicked Trump the hell out of the White House. Trump tried to overturn the entire election. Trump spent months before Election Day saying the mail-in ballots are a scam. He was pushing his followers to vote in person while Democrats voted early or voted by mail. That wasn't an accident. Trump wanted Democratic ballots to be easier to challenge or to toss out later. And then came the lawsuits, 60-something. Nearly all of them failed. Some of them were laughed out of court by judges that Trump himself had appointed to the bench, but Trump kept going. He called the Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, and begged him to find 11,780 votes. He pressured the DOJ to declare this was a corrupt election. They didn't do it. He pushed fake slates of electors in multiple states, the idea being, let's just send people who will say we cast our electoral votes for Trump, even though Trump lost. He tried to get Mike Pence to block certification, which Pence had no legal power to do. And when none of it worked, he pointed to the Capitol and he said, walk down Pennsylvania Avenue with me. We're going to fight. And they did. And over 1.5 million of you were with me on that day, January 6, 2021. A mob stormed the Capitol. Lawmakers were hiding under desks. People died because Trump couldn't admit that he lost. And to this day, he's still lying. He still says he won. He says the rioters are hostages. He pardoned a whole bunch of them. He has made belief in the lie that he won in 2020 sort of like the entry fee to the Republican Party. If you don't repeat it, you're not my friend. You're not on my team. And so this goes way beyond sore feelings from Trump, and there are many, but it's about power. Trump wants a system where the votes only count when he wins. Losing's not allowed. That's not democracy. But Trump doesn't care because Trump wants a dictatorship. And so now we are on the precipice of 2026 and critically important midterm elections. Republican lawmakers around the country are carrying the torch of 2020's ideas from Trump. They are cutting polling places in black neighborhoods. They're passing laws to give Republican-controlled legislatures more power over the results. They are purging voters from voter rolls. They're making it harder to vote by mail. They're giving Trump loyalists control over how are elections counted, how are they certified. They say it's about security. We know that it's not. It is about control. They want to choose. They don't want a system where the people choose. They want a system where they decide who even counts as a person, as we've seen from the threats for denaturalization and deportation without due process. So Trump has told tens of millions of people, let me put it a different way. Trump has convinced tens of millions of people. He's told hundreds of millions, but he's convinced tens of millions of people, his supporters, that democracy can only be trusted if he wins. And that what you, if you believe that your vote doesn't matter, you might not show up to begin with. So there is a rigging here that maybe it's not worth me showing up, but that's part of the tactic. That's the play. If they can get us to give up, they would win without even cheating. So the takeaway here, as we are now just months from the start of the midterm season officially, and building towards another scenario where can we put any check here on this growing authoritarianism? Don't let yourself be convinced that your vote doesn't matter. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be working this damn hard to make it harder for you to vote. Now, one final thing I want to say, and I know we're going to have a lot of time to dig into this. Many people, people like me in a sense who look at things extremely rationally go, wait a second, does my vote matter? Because when have any of these national elections come down to one vote? They never have. My vote isn't going to change anything. And to you, here's what I say. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have the same thought, who say to themselves, I don't know that my vote really matters because none of these elections have ever come down to one vote. That voting block decides elections. And what I mean by that is the following. If everybody who says to themselves, I don't know if it's worth voting, I don't know if my vote matters because these elections never come down to one. If everybody who wonders that stays home, well, we give it up. Then they win. If everybody who has the thought, I don't know if my vote matters because it's never come down to one vote, if that group of people goes, but I'm going to vote anyway, as a voting bloc, we actually decide elections. So we're going to have significant, extensive coverage of what's going on here. We'll be speaking more to Mark Elias. We're going to be doing all of this stuff. But for now, just remember, the reason they're working this damn hard to make it harder to vote is because they know that if we all do vote, it's terrible for them. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/thedavidpakmanshow. Make sure you're on my Substack at substack.davidpakman.com. So I learned a while ago that I was clenching and grinding my teeth at night, not on purpose, not because I was necessarily stressed out by something obvious, but grinding and clenching without even knowing it. And when I talked to my dentist about it, about getting a night guard, it was a whole thing. Appointment, mold, waiting, a bill that seemed very high. And ultimately, I found Remy, and Remy is our sponsor today. Remy sends a kit right to your door to take an impression of your teeth with super clear step-by-step instructions. You send it back to them and they will custom make your night guard right here in the United States, in Las Vegas specifically. No waiting rooms, no overpriced bills, just a better way to protect your teeth while you sleep. Try Remy risk-free at shopremy.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman to get 50% off your night guard at checkout. The link is in the description.